Hey you guys, welcome to Charlie's Universe 2014, and this is the Sex and the City series, which I'm continuing, and I'm going to continue on with Chapter 7. I figured, well, I have a little bit of time to waste before I got to go to job number 2, no comment. So, I figured instead of taking a nap and waking up crankier than what I already seem to be, I might as well read the next chapter in the Sex and the City series, so that's what's going to go on right now. I want to thank anyone who's actually paying attention. Soraya, you are like the only one who probably is paying attention to this series, so I hope you are enjoying the book. So I'll try to make sure I read as clearly and as fabulously as possible. Also, you guys, once this Sex and the City series is over, I'm going to start a new series for you Trekkies out there. You might enjoy this. This Star Trek Deep Space Nine. What You Leave Behind. I used to be hugely into Star Trek, so I might actually enjoy this book as well. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue on with the Sex and the City series with Chapter 7. And if you have not seen Chapters 1 through 6, please make sure you go back a few videos and check out those chapters. It's already introduced a few characters and everything, so far it's pretty interesting. Alright, so I'm going to continue on with Chapter 7. This is the International Crazy Girls. If you're lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, you might one day run into a certain type of woman in New York. Like a constantly migrating, brightly covered bird, she's always on the go, and not in the mundane, filiofax-filled way. This woman travels from one international hotspot to another, and when she gets tired of the party season in London, when she's had enough of skiing in Aspen or a guest off, when she's sick of all-night parties in South America, she might come back to Rose. Temporarily, mind you, in New York. On a rainy afternoon in January, a woman we'll call Amita Amilieff arrived at Kennedy International Airport from London. She was wearing a white fake fur Gucci coat, black leather pants custom made at New York Leather. They're the last pair they've made in this leather. I had to fight with Ella McPherson over them, she said. And sunglasses. She had 10T Anthony bags, and she looked like a movie star. The only thing missing was the limo, but she took care of that by prevailing upon a wealthy-looking businessman to help her with her bags. He couldn't resist, as virtually no men are able to resist Emilita. And before he knew what had hit him, he, Emilita, and the 10T Anthony bags were crawling toward the city in this company-paid-for limousine, and he was offering to take her to dinner that night. "I'd love to, darling," she said in that breathless, slightly accented voice that hints at Swiss finishing schools and palace balls. "But I'm terribly tired. I really just came to New York for a rest, you see. We could have tea tomorrow, though, at the Four Seasons, and then maybe a little shopping afterwards. There are a few things I have to pick up at Gucci." The businessman agreed. He dropped her off in front of an apartment building on Beekman Place, took her number, and promised to call her. Upstairs in the apartment, Amelita put in a phone call to Gucci. Affecting an upper-crust English accent, she said, "This is Lady Caroline Beavers. You have a coat on hold for me. I've just arrived in town, and I'll be picking it up tomorrow." "Very good, Lady Beavers," the salesperson said. Amelita hung up the phone and laughed. The next day, Carrie was on the phone with an old friend, Robert. "Amelita's back," she said. "I'm having lunch with her." "Amelita," Robert said. "Is she still alive? She's still beautiful?" "She's dangerous, but if you're a guy, you could sleep with her. It's like becoming a member of a special club. You know, she was with Jake and Capote Duncan, all those rock stars, billionaires. It's a bonding thing, you know. The guy thinks me and Jake." "Men," Carrie said, "are ridiculous." Robert was listening. "There aren't very many girls like Amelita," he said. "Gabriella was one of them. Merritt, too, and Sandra. Amelita's so beautiful, you know, and really funny and very bold. I mean, she's incredible. You'll run into one of these girls in Paris, and they'll be wearing a see-through dress, and it will drive you nuts. and you see their pictures in W and places like that, and their allure keeps growing on you. Their sexual power is like this amazing, dazzling force that can change your life. You think if you can touch it, which you can't, which Carrie hung up on him. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Carrie was sitting at the bar and Harry Kipaprani waiting for Amelia to arrive. As usual, she was half an hour late. At the bar, a businessman, his female associate, and their client were talking about sex. I think men are turned off by women who have sex with them on the first night, the woman said. She was dressed in a prissy naval blue suit. You've got to wait at least 3 dates if you want the man to take you seriously. That depends on the woman, said the client. He was late 30s, looked German but spoke with a Spanish accent, an Argentinian. I don't get it, said the woman. The Argentinian looked at her. You middle-class American women who always want to hook a man, you're the ones who must play by the rules. You can't afford to make a mistake. But there is a certain type of woman, very beautiful and from a certain class, who can do whatever she wants. At that moment, Amelia walked in. There was quite a stir at the door at the maitre d' embraced her. Look at you, she said. So slim? Are you still running 5 miles a day? And her coat and packages were whisked away. She was wearing a tweedly Jill Sanders suit. The skirt alone cost over $1,000, and a green cashmere shell. Is it hot in here? She said, fanning herself with her gloves. She removed her jacket. The entire restaurant gaped. Sweet pea, she said, spotting Carrie at the bar. Your table is ready, said the maitre d'. I have so many things to tell you, Amelita said. I have just barely escaped with my life. Sometime in April, Amelita had gone to London to attend a wedding, where she met Lord Skanky Poo, not his real name, but a real lord darling, she said. Related to the loyal family and with the castle and foxhounds, he said he fell in love with her instantly. The idiot, the moment he saw me in the church. Darling, I adore you, he said, coming up to me at the reception, but I especially adore your hat. That should have been a dead giveaway, but I wasn't thinking clearly at the time. It was staying with Catherine Johnson Bates in London, and she was driving me crazy. She kept complaining about my stuff all over her fucking flat. Well, she's a Virgo, so what can you expect? Anyway, all I could think about was finding another place to stay, and I knew Catherine had a crush on Lord Skanks, and she used to knit him scarves out of the horrendous worsted wool, and he wouldn't give her the time of day. So naturally, I couldn't resist. Plus, I needed a place to stay. That night after the wedding, Amelita basically moved into the Eaton Square house, and for the first 2 weeks, everything was great. I was doing my geisha routine, Amelia said. Back rubs, bringing him tea, reading the newspapers first so I could point out what was interesting. He took her shopping. They entertained, throwing a shooting party at the castle. Amelia helped him with the guest list, got all the right people, charmed the servants, and he was impressed. Then when they got back to London, the trouble began. You know, I've got all my lingerie that I've been collecting over the years, Amelia said. Carrie nodded. She knew all about Amelia's vast collection of designer clothing, which she'd been acquiring over the past 15 years. Knew it well. In fact, because she had to help Amelia to wrap it up in special tissue to put in storage, a job that had taken 3 days. Well, one evening he comes in when I'm dressing, she said. Darling, he says, I've always wondered what it would be like to wear one of those Merry Widows. Mind if I give it a try? Then I'll know what it feels like to be you. Fine. But the next day he wants me to spank him with a rolled-up newspaper. Darling, don't you think you'd get more out of life if you read this instead? I asked. No! I want a good thrashing, he said. So I complied. Another mistake. I got it to the point where he would wake up in the morning, put on my clothes, and then he wouldn't leave the house. This went on for days, and then he insisted on wearing my Chanel jewelry. How did he look in it? Carrie asked. Pas mal, Amita said. He was one of those beautiful English types. You know, you can never really tell if they're gay or straight. But the whole thing just got so pathetic. He was crawling around on his knees and hands, exposing his bum. And to think that before I was considering marrying him. Anyway, I told him I was leaving. He wouldn't let me. He locked me in the bedroom, and I had to escape out the window. And I was stupidly wearing manila blank spike heels instead of the more sensitive Gucci ones because I let him fondle my shoes and the manolos were the only ones he didn't like. He said they were last year. Then he wouldn't let me back in the house. He said he was holding my clothes ransom because of some stupid itsy-bitsy phone bill I'd rack up. 2,000 pounds, I said. Darling, what am I supposed to do? I have to call my daughter and my mother. But I had my trump card. I took his cellular phone. I called him from the street. Darling, I said, I'm going to meet Catherine for tea. When I get back, I expect to see all my suitcases neatly packed on the front stoop. Then I'm going to go through them. If anything's missing, one tiny earring, one G-string, the rubber on the heel of any shoe, I'm going to call Nigel Dempster. Did he do it? Carrie asked, somewhat in awe. Of course, Amelita said. The English are scared to death of the press. If you ever need to bring one heel, just threaten to call the papers. Just then, the Argentinian walked in by the table. Amelita, he said, extending his hand and giving her a little bow. Oh, Chris. ¿Cómo está? She asked. And then they said a bunch of stuff in Spanish that Carrie couldn't understand. And then Chris said, I'm in New York for a week. We should get together. Of course, darling, Amelita said. Looking up at him, she had his way of crinkling her eyes when she smiled. That basically meant bug off. Ugh, rich Argentinian, she said. I stayed on his ranch once. We rode polo ponies all over the campus. His wife was pregnant. He was so cute I fucked him and she found out. She had the nerve to be upset. He was a lousy lay. She should have been happy to have someone take that off her hands. Miss Amif? The waiter asked. Phone call for you. Righty, she said triumphantly, returning to the table after a few minutes. Riley was the lead guitarist in a famous rock band. He wants me to go on tour with him. Brazil, Singapore. I told him I'd have to think about it. These guys are so used to women falling at their feet. You have to be a bit reserved. It set you apart. Suddenly, there was again a flurry of activity at the door. Carrie looked up and quickly ducked her head, pretending to examine her fingernails. Don't look now, she said. But Ray's here. Ray? Oh, I know Ray, Amelia said. Her eyes narrowed. Ray wasn't a man but a woman who could be classified loosely anyway, as being in the same category as Amelia. She was also an international beauty, irresistible to men, but a nutcase. A late 70s model, she had moved to L.A., ostensibly to pursue an acting career. She hadn't landed any roles, but she reeled in several well-known actors. And like Amelita, she had a love child, rumored to be the offspring of a superstar. Ray scanned the restaurant. She was famous for her eyes, among other things, which were huge, round, the irises of such a light blue that they appeared almost white. They stopped on Amelita. She waved, walked over. What are you doing here? She asked, seemingly delighted, even though the two were rumored to be sworn enemies in L.A. I just got in, Amelita said. From London. Did you go to that wedding? Lady Beatrice? Amelita asked. Yes, wonderful. All the titled Europeans. Dern, Ray said. She had a slight southern accent, which was probably put on since she was from Iowa. I should have gone. But then I got involved with Snake, she said, naming an actor well known for action films. He was in his late 60s but still making them. And, I couldn't get away. I see, Amelia said, giving her the crinkly eye treatment. Ray didn't seem to notice. I'm supposed to meet this girlfriend of mine, but I told Snake I'd meet her back at the hotel at 3. He's here doing publicity, and now it's nearly 2:15. Snake freaks out if you're late, and I'm always in retard. It's just a question of handling men properly, Amelia said, but I do remember that Snake hates to be kept waiting. You must tell him hello for me, darling. But if you forget, don't worry about it. I'll be seeing him in a month, anyway. He invited me to go skiing, just as friends, of course. Of course, Ray said. There was an awkward pause. Ray looked directly at Carrie, who wanted to throw her napkin over her head. Please, she thought, please don't ask my name. Well, maybe I'll give her a call, Ray said. Why don't you do that? Amelia asked. The phone's right over there. Ray departed. Momentarily, anyway. She fucked everybody, Carrie said, including Mr. Big. Oh, please, sweet pea, I don't care about that. Amelia said, if a woman wants to sleep with a man, makes the choice, it's her business. But she's not a good person. I heard that she wanted to be one of Madame Alex's girls, but even Alex thought she was too crazy. So, how does she survive? Amelia raised her right elbow. She was silent for a moment. In the end, she was a lady through and through, having been raised on Fifth Avenue with the coming over the ball, the whole works. But Carrie really wanted to know. She takes gifts. A Bulgari watch, a Harry Winston necklace, clothing, cars, a bungalow on someone's property, someone who wants to help her, and cash. She has a child. There are lots of rich men out there who take pity. These actors with their millions. They'll write a check for $50,000, sometimes just to go away. Oh, please, she said, looking at Carrie. Don't be so shocked. You always were such an innocent sweet pea. But then you always had a career. Even if you were starving, you had a career. Women like Ray and I, we don't want to work. I've always just wanted to live. But that doesn't mean it's easy, Amelia had quit smoking, but she picked up one of Carrie's cigarettes and waited for the waiter to light in. How many times have I called you, crying, no money, wondering what I was going to do, where I was going to go next? Men promise things and don't deliver. If I could have been a call girl, it would have been so much easier. It's not the sex that's the problem. If I like a man, I'm going to do it anyway. But the fact that you'll never be on their level, you're an employee, but at least you might walk away with some cash. She raised her eyebrows and shrugged. My way, well, is there any future? And you've got to keep up with the clothes and the body, the exercise classes, the massages, facials, plastic surgery. It's expensive. Look at Ray. She had her breasts done, lips, butt. She's not young, darling. Over 40. What you see is all she's got. She mashed her cigarette in the ashtray. Why am I smoking? It's so bad for the skin. I wish you'd stop, sweet pea. But you remember, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was sick. Flat broke. Sharing a bedroom with a student. For Christ's sake, in a lousy flat because that was all I could afford. $150 a month. I had to go on welfare so I could get medical care to have the baby. I had to take the bus to the country hospital. And when I really needed help, sweet pea, there were no men around. I was alone, except for a few of my good girlfriends. At that moment, Ray reappeared at the table, biting her lower lip. Do y'all mind? She said. This girl's gonna show up momentarily, but in the meantime, I need a cocktail. Waiter, bring me a vodka martini. Straight up. She sat down. She didn't look at Carrie. Hey, I want to talk to you about Snake, Ray said to Amelia. He told me he was with you. Did he? Amelia asked. Well, you know, Snake and I, we have an intellectual relationship. Do you now? And I just thought he was a pretty good fuck who was good with my kid, Ray said. I ain't worried about that. I just don't think I can trust the guy. I thought he was engaged to somebody, Amelia said. Some dark-haired woman who's having his baby. Oh, shit. Carmelita or something like that? She's like an auto mechanic from Nowheresville. Yee-taw. Snake was going skiing and his car broke down and he took in a garage. And then she was with her wrench and she immediately slipped. Nah, he's trying to get rid of her. It's very simple then, Amelia said. You just got some spies. I have my monsieur and my maid. Send him your monsieur or chauffeur and then have them report back to you. God damn it, Ray screamed. She opened her large red lipstick mouth and leaned back precariously in her chair, laughing hysterically. Her blonde hair was neatly white, perfectly straight. She was a freak all night, but amazingly sexy. I knew I liked you, she said. The chair thumped to the floor and Ray nearly crashed into the table. Everyone in the restaurant was looking. Amelita was laughing, almost hiccuping. How come we're not better friends? Ray asked. That's what I want to know. I'm trying to look at the clock now. Gee, Ray, I have no idea, Amelia said. She was just smiling now. Maybe it has to do something with Brewster. That goddamned little shit actor, Ray said. You mean those lies that I told him about you because I wanted to get him for myself? Well, shit, honey. Can you blame me? He had the biggest willy in L.A. When I saw the thing, we were out to dinner at a restaurant, and he puts my hand on it under the table. And I got so excited I took it out of his pants and started rubbing it. And one of the waitresses saw it and started screaming because it was so big, and then he got thrown out. I said, that thing is mine. I ain't sharing it with no one. He was pretty big, Amelia said. Pretty big? Honey, he was like a horse, Ray said. You know, I'm an expert in bed. I'm the best any man ever had. But when you get to my level, something happens. The average sized cock just doesn't do anything for you anymore. Oh yeah, I'll sleep with those guys, but I'll tell them all, I've got to be able to go out and get my little bit of fun. My satisfaction. Ray had only 3/4 of her martini, but something seemed to be happening to her. It was like the high beams were on, and no one was driving. Oh yeah, she said. I just love that filled up feeling. Give it to me, baby. Do me. She started rocking her pelvis against the chair. She half raised her right arm, closed her eyes. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, baby. Oh. She ended with a squeal and opened her eyes. She was staring straight at Carrie as she'd suddenly noticed her for the first time. What's your name, honey? She said. And Carrie suddenly recalled a story about how Capote Duncan had sex with Ray on a couch in the middle of a party in front of everyone. Carrie, she said. Carrie? Ray asked. Have I met you? No, Amelia said. She's a great girl. One of us, but an intellectual. A writer. You gotta write my story, Ray said. I'm telling you, my life would be a bestseller. So much stuff has happened to me. I'm a survivor. She looked to Amelia for affiliation. Look at us. We're both survivors. The other girls like us. Sandra? She's in AA and works all the time and never goes out, Amelia said. Gabriella? Call girl? Marit? Went crazy, detoxed in Silver Hill? Tell me about it, Ray said. I've heard she freaked out on your couch and you had to take her to the bug house. She's out now. Has a job. PR. Poor relations, I call it, Ray said. They want to use her for her social connections, but her eyes are so glazed over you can't hardly talk to her. She just sits there like a bug while they paw through her Rolodex. Carrie couldn't help it. She laughed. Ray glared at her. Well, it ain't funny, you know? Alright, you guys, that is the end of Chapter 7. As I'm sitting here looking at the clock, it's already 3:04. I'm like, dang, time just flew by like it was nothing. So I gotta get ready for job number 2. I just wanted to come on and do this chapter real quickly. WWE Survivor Series is going to be this Sunday live on the WWE Network. Very excited. Can't wait to have my friends over to celebrate that. Also, you guys, like I said, the next book reading series is going to start following the Sex and the City series, so I'm very excited about it. Anyway, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and go so I can get ready, and thank you all for watching, and I will definitely talk to you soon. Alright, I'll be back. Make sure you look out for Chapter 8.